Welcome to the Bike Life Podcast by Warmshowers Foundation, where we will be sharing knowledge, experience, tools, and stories of touring cyclists and hosts from around the world. I'm Tara Lee, the woman behind the scenes at Warmshowers Foundation, the leading platform for cyclists looking for hosts and to connect with a passionate international community. Find out more by visiting us at Warmshowers.org. Now, on to the show. Today's guest finds himself completely in love with bike touring. He's been cycling for 4 years and has fallen so deeply in love with it since his first tour that he plans to never stop. And he is such a wealth of information and inspiration. I know that you're going to love hearing from him as much as I'm going to. So welcome Tyler Diedrick to the show.
Thank you for the awesome introduction, Tara Lee. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I enjoyed when we were first chatting about this show because you have a passion for touring, and I know that you have a tour coming up, which we're going to talk about, but you also have been listening to Bike Life, to this show itself, and has found inspiration in the show, and it's so wonderful to see you here now talking on the show. It's like a full circle loop, which just makes my heart happy.
Likewise, ditto right back at you. I'm feeling the same way, so super excited.
Yeah, this is fun. So take us like way back. Let's go way back. Well, it feels like way back. It's not way back, but before 2019, had bike touring even been on your peripheral?
Like not even close. As far away as the moon. Before 2019, I never cycled more than 10 miles at a time. I didn't even know what bike touring was. And then I was gifted a book called To Shake the Sleeping Self by Jedidiah Jenkins. And that book straight up changed my life, as cliche as that sounds. I was hooked. I was like, I can't believe you can cycle, in his case, from Oregon to Patagonia. And I was like, this is just such an amazing idea. Why can't I do it? So basically, I think I was halfway through that book, and I know there's tons of cycling books out there, bike touring books, but I highly recommend that one as it inspired me. And about halfway through the book, I decided I was going to do it or do something similar, because why not? I was at a point in my life where I was going to be able to. So basically put in my couple weeks, or I think I gave about 2 months notice at work, sold all my stuff. My lease ended, and I was off to start touring. So knowing nothing about bikes, I asked around to anyone that knew anything about them, and found a model that I liked, found one on eBay in Sacramento, California, and flew out there, bought the bike, loaded it up, and headed north to Alaska.
Wow. Wow. There's a lot in that share. And so how long were you reading the book? And we'll put the link to the book in the show notes. And thank you for that reference. How long were you reading the book before you're like, okay, I am all in?
Yeah, I was so obsessed. Like I was reading it every day, and I wasn't a huge reader at the time. Different story today. I'm reading every day for hours. But at the time, yeah, I was reading multiple chapters every day. So it was probably like a week and a half. And within a week and a half, I knew I was going to do it. And he just kind of described his story and the backstory behind it. And, you know, the 3 years from when he committed to actually doing it. And I was like, you know what? I don't need that much time. I got, at that point, it was probably 3 months. And I said, I'm ready. I can see the progression, the things I need to do to get myself ready. At least I thought, which didn't involve much training, as I know a lot of other people on their first tour say they don't train much. And I can get into why I say I thought I would be ready, but probably wasn't here in a second.
Yeah, I think that's a common story, and I'm excited to hear it. I want to just say that this is why we always encourage people, if you have a story to tell and you have a desire to write a book, do, because this is an example of how reading someone else's experience alone gave you such inspiration, and you just knew in your body this was right for you. Like there wasn't a question of that. And I mean, you're an adventurous type, or you were in that moment, because that's a big life decision, but it came from an inspiration from somebody else's share. So those of you that listen to the show, you might know that we have a new way of we're sharing other people's books in our newsletter. And so I encourage people, if you've written a book or if you're desiring to write a book, do so. Let this be the example of why we say that, because you have the ability to impact others. Okay, so let's go back to this. You quit your job, your lease was up, you flew to California, you're like, yay, there's my new baby. You got your bike. And how was the first week?
Yeah, so I'll start with the first day. Okay. I didn't even have a helmet, and the people, and do not ever recommend riding without a helmet, right? But I was just so like in love with the time and just free, and I'm like, wind will blow through my hair. Anyway, the wife of the guy that sold me the bike on eBay, she wouldn't let me leave her house without a helmet, so she gifted me a helmet, and I'm forever thankful for that. Meanwhile, I'm loading up my bike and the peignets, which I never had in my hands before, at a city park, loading all the gear in, no idea really what I'm doing, and set off on my way through Sacramento. And within the first block, I literally kicked one of the peignets off the back of my bike because it wasn't set up correctly. And I'm just like, I kick it and like I almost fall over, and I look down, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I literally have no idea what I was like, as green as you possibly can get. Mm-hmm. So that was day one. And then by day two, my knees were in so much pain that over the next few days, they got progressively worse. And I had to get off the bike for 4 days because I literally couldn't ride. My knees hurt so bad. And at the time, I didn't know what was going on. And looking back, it's simply because I didn't truly know how to ride a bicycle. As funny as that sounds, like I thought I did, but I didn't know how to bike tour. So I was grinding gears, keeping it, as high up as I can, powering up hills, and like, oh yeah, this is great. And a few days of that, of 30 plus miles, when you're not used to it, by day 6, I cycled 5 miles and couldn't push any further. I was walking the bike, and I was scared. Because I didn't know what to do or how to get help with it. And I'm like, my whole tour is in jeopardy, I feel like, and came upon an oasis of a campground. And it had a hot tub at the campground. It had an ice machine. So basically, and I grew up playing sports, and I just went back for a couple days and just ice heat, back and forth until my knees were basically healed. Luckily, had some more experienced cyclists that came to the campground, gave me some oils, some cycling tips. They're like, as soon as they heard I was always staying in high gear, they're like, no, drop it down when you're going up hills. You'll be fine. It's overuse. And sure enough, that's what it was. So going back to thinking I was ready by not training, that was an example of, I just did not know what I was doing. But once I learned that, I was good.
But you learned fast. I mean, at least if you have to learn that particular lesson, it's like you adventured into learning as you go. You were truly the learning as you go. So then the first week, okay, you learned how to ride a bike in the right gears. You also brought in like all this, sports history knowledge on rehab, right? That's incredible. So those were wins. I'm not sure you saw them that way at the time, but those were wins along the way. And we don't necessarily expect the difficulties to happen when we embark on anything new, and yet they always do. And that's part of the journey, is overcoming those challenges. So, all right. So you continue on your way. You leave the oasis of a campground, and what was next?
So after that, I think the next major turning point in the trip was another person that popped into my life. And in this case, it was a Warm Showers host. So starting the trip, I had no idea what Warm Showers was. I made it to the coast and started hearing a little about it. And a couple weeks in, I finally decided to stay at a Warmshowers. And it was shortly after the Lost Coast of California, which for those that have done it, it's an amazing kind of off the grid 2 to 3 day route of just like pristine wilderness in Northern California. But it's tough cycling, multiple 1,500, 2,000 plus climbs over those 2 days. So I was tired. But the bigger need was my legs. Now that my knees were basically good to go, my legs were filled with pus-filled blisters. Like, I know this is gross, but dripping out, like pus out all over the legs. And I'm like, what is this? And I started thinking back. And when I first made it to the coast of California, I saw some seals down by the water. And I'm like, oh, I need to go get a closer look. I love nature, love wildlife. So I ran down this, hill and I got all cut up. I was in shorts and my legs got all cut up. And then got to so I knew that might have been an issue, but I'm like, that's just brush. Like, what would make these pus-filled blisters appear? And got to the Warmshowers host, and I showed her my legs, and she's like, yeah, that's poison oak. So what ended up happening was, and I always go on little day hikes and short things here and there. So I ended up getting poison oak in the cuts that I originally got, and it got infected all over the legs. And as you can imagine, you're out camping, not getting a shower and clean every day, and it just got really bad. So it was to the point where I was scratching in the middle of the night, waking myself up. And now this is step 2 of like, oh my God, like, I know how to cycle now, but now I got this body issue, right, with my legs. And again, I'm like, I am so green. And anyway, the Warmshowers host, super knowledgeable, gave me a product called Technu, which basically pulls the oil out of those wounds. So I rubbed it on every day for the next 10 days. After that, I was all healed up, scabbed over, good to go. But without that Warmshowers host, I honestly do not know what I would have done. So forever, ever grateful.
Do you want to share the name? Give them a shout out.
Funny enough, so at that point in the trip, I was so new to it, I didn't even get the name of that.
I love it. Okay, so if you're listening to this show and you know who you are, message us and we will add your name into the show notes, because I love to give people a shout out. And listen, we can't always remember all the names along journeys, especially when you're in the midst of the transformational experience you were in. So totally understand. But if that person is listening, message us and we'll add you.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I stayed at 5 other hosts along my journey. Remember all of their names and everything. It's like, it was just that first one. I think I was just so caught up in everything.
A magical miracle person showed up. So whoever that little angel is of helping to heal your body, we want to hear from you.
Yes, and absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So did you rest during those 10 days or were you still cycling while you were healing?
Yeah, I was still cycling. Kept going. And, luckily at that point, Northern California and especially Oregon, super set up for cyclists. Like hiker biker sites at the time were $7-8 a night, and you got a shower every night. So I started to be in a situation where I could be more clean and really take care of my legs, which was much better than the first couple weeks where I didn't even know about these hiker biker sites. Again, like Warmshowers, I was just green and like, wild camping and stuff. So now that I had sites and every night I was, able to get a good shower, it really helped.
So how long was that journey in total?
The entire tour.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just over 2 months, 64 days. Mm-hmm. So the entirety of it went from Sacramento all the way up to Ketchikan, Alaska.
Did you spend any time in Alaska?
So funny enough, my original route was planned to go all the way inland BC, Canada, all the way up to Fairbanks, Alaska. But when I got right to the border, the Olympic Peninsula of Washington, hurdle 3 popped in. And this is a long answer to your story.
I want to hear it.
Your question.
Tell us.
So I got there, and the Olympic Peninsula is one of my favorite places on planet Earth. There's not many places where you can get rainforest mountains and beach all within like one day, and that's one of them. And so I'm just enjoying the ride, and I'm on the Olympic Discovery Trail for anyone that's been up there. Just absolutely beautiful. And was going down a hill. It was wet and leaf covered. And all of a sudden I didn't know where my glasses were, like my sunglasses, and it was sunny out. And so I start feeling around and then finally find them, and they're propped up on my head, you know? And by the time I got them and put them on, I realized I was going 35 miles an hour down a hill with, at the bottom, there's a bridge, like a sharp turn across a river, and I had no chance to slow down. So basically grab my my handlebars, squeeze the brakes as hard as I could, and somehow intelligently just rolled into the cliffside at the bottom to put the bike between my body and some sharp rocks. And anyway, went down, was all cut up on the left side of my body. Did some luckily I had a first aid kit. I was smart there. Did the best I could cleaning things up, and then made it a mile to the highway, hitchhiked into Port Angeles. And Travis Blair, if you ever listen to this, you were another angel on my trip who I stay in touch with to this day. But he drove me, some bloody kid standing on the side of the road with a bicycle, 30 miles of Port Angeles, and to urgent care to make sure I didn't get the wounds infected. So anyway, that crash changed the course of my trip from inland BC to stay more along the coast, which was near, medical care if I needed it, hostels, that sort of thing, where there was more towns and things. So I decided to, as hard as it was, to say I can't cycle, a month and a half through the BC wilderness like this. I want to keep going. So I'm going to modify it and basically island hop the rest of the way and hike and bike the best I could up the coast. So that's how I ended up in Ketchikan. Spent 4 days there. So not as much time in Alaska as I hoped on this trip. But yeah, spent 4 days in Ketchikan, and also an amazing place.
I am super inspired by the obstacles that you faced and your willingness to continue. So take us into your mindset at the time when each of those things happened. Did it cross your mind to bail, or were you able to stay centered enough to say, okay, I'm learning? Because it's easy to think that after, but when you're in it, our mind and our stress and our nervous system don't necessarily process it that way. So take us through how did you handle those three different situations and decide to continue on?
Yeah, I had moments of thinking to bail every time. Each one of those, it was tough. And usually what worked was a good night of sleep. Go to bed and think about it in the morning and restore some confidence. And whether it be a Warm Showers host offering me a bed shortly after the crash in Port Angeles. John is his name. So if you're ever in Port Angeles and John's there, an amazing cook, gave me a nice bed and a shower. But you wake up after something like that, shortly after a crash, in a situation there where someone cares and wants to see you keep going, no matter what, like that just boosts your own confidence in yourself. So I really relied on giving it time to let those thoughts of fear and wanting to bail kind of get out, and then talking to people and telling them the story, and then seeing their confidence in me to keep going was really, really what helped me in all of those situations. And John in Port Angeles was just one example.
Yeah, it's amazing. Your story is amazing. And so as it finished up, what did you do? Did you come back and resume work, or did you start planning your next trip?
Yeah, no. So once I made it there to Ketchikan, I took another 6 months and just traveled around the world. I had the opportunity to fly to multiple countries with friends, family, my brother especially, who's a flight attendant. So he had a schedule where we could just kind of explore the world together. So hitting Hawaii, Costa Rica, Scotland, just all over the place, anywhere we could find to explore. So spent 6 months doing that, basically until I ran out of money, and was like, okay, I need to go and work again and make some money to fund life. But it was it was about 8 months, where I was essentially vagabonding on and off the bike. So did some smaller bike tours during that time as well. But it was basically living out a backpack off my bike or hiking around for those remaining 6 months.
And did you do another tour yet, or is this next one coming, the next one that's up?
Yeah. So in terms of anything more than a week or an extended weekend, I've done those over the past 3 years. But this next one, which starts in 1 month from today, which I'm so excited
Celebrating
about.
you. Yay.
Yes. I literally have a countdown behind me of working days left until I depart, and I can't wait. So yeah, no major bike tour since then, and I cannot wait to get back because I've thought about it every single day since then.
So where are you going? Tell us about the tour in 1 month from today at the time of recording. So by the time people listen to this, you may already be on your tour, but tell us where you're going and what you have planned so far.
Yeah, so I got the next 6 months planned out pretty well. So I've been living in Northern Virginia for the past 3 years, and there's so many rail trails out here. So one that I'm going to do is from DC to Pittsburgh. There's 2 trails on old railroads that lead right there, the CNO and the Gap Trail. And then make it back as close as I can to Wisconsin before I have a commitment on Memorial Day. I'm going to do a tour through the UP, or the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, head out to Columbia and do a month down there. More day rides on that trip. And then I'm going to go, and then this is the kicker, the one I'm super excited about. On July 21st of 2019 was the day that I crashed in Port Angeles, Washington. July 21st of this year, 4 years later, I'm going to go back to Travis's house, the guy that picked me up when I was hitchhiking, go to the exact spot that I crashed and continue north on my original route through BC. And oh my gosh, I have the chills just thinking about it.
Me too.
And so those first 3 I just described are shorter ones, just get me reacclimated to the lifestyle, maybe build up the strength in my knees again. And then, yeah, July 21st of this year, I'll be picking up in the spot I left off.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. This is so great. And I would love for you to tag us in photos, tag us in that moment, take a video, tag us in that moment so we can share it, because this is momentous for you and for all of us that are on this journey with you now that you've shared.
Yeah, and I'm not an emotional guy, but I think a few tears may be shed in that moment because it was a pretty big one for me. So
trauma, right? You're facing your trauma.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. So I love this, Tyler. This is so great. Let's talk a little bit about what it's been like listening to the show. And not that I'm not saying it in terms of like tooting our horns, right? I'm just here, the vessel, to help you share your story. But I feel like we can be inspired in so many different ways. And we found, especially during the pandemic and since then, that people are using this show as a way to stay connected in our community and to think of what's possible. So tell us how the show impacted you in that way.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. And I've been involved with, my few stays with Warm Showers a few years ago and have used bike flights as well. I know you're sponsored to ship my bicycle, and things like that. So I was aware, getting the newsletters, and I started to see, the Bike Life podcast called out, and I had it on my backlog of things to read and in this case, listen to. So finally in January, when I fully made the decision that I was going to do this next tour, I knew I needed some inspiration. I was honestly struggling kind of with day-to-day life and convincing myself and building up confidence to go do this again because it was facing trauma. There was a lot of moments in that past tour where, I had to overcome low self-confidence after these big milestones. And, really starting to listen to Bike Life 3 months ago, I became obsessed. Like literally every episode I drew something from. No matter how crazy the stories were, everyone had a story, and I was able to draw one piece of inspiration or something from literally every episode where I'm like, oh my gosh, like that person went through something that I did in some way. And like, it was just like that boost I needed. So in 3 months, I literally binged all of your episodes, listened to 74.
I think, oh my gosh, you must be so tired of hearing my voice.
Not at, and
Oh my goodness.
not in the slightest. Like Taverly, and I genuinely say this, like, I don't know without Bike Life, I feel like if I could have truly, convinced myself to do it again. So like it was a huge part of that journey. And to the extent last Friday, I literally listened to 10 episodes in one day because I was just like, I'm almost there. I'm almost through it. Like 5 hours that I just listened to your voice and Jerry's on some now too. And like, I can't say enough how much this kind of got me past that last step of getting out of my own head and hearing other people's stories. So just one more piece of this journey that has been so amazing.
Thank you for sharing that and for telling me that you're not annoyed or tired of listening to my voice yet. But also to all the guests that have been on this show that listen to it. This just goes to show you that it does make a difference. And it also makes a difference for us to hear it because, this is a labor of love of our time to, feature what is possible right out there and to do it through this podcast. It's time and resources and energy and we love it. And we don't often get to hear of what the impact is. We can tell by the numbers. We know the show reaches a lot of people across the world. But hearing it from you personally has truly just inspired me. And that's what I meant at the beginning, that it inspires all of us for you to be willing to face, these moments that you face and keep going and to do it again, and then to be willing to come and talk about it and talk about how other people's stories inspire you. Because oftentimes we don't hear about what inspires a human to take the leap to do something incredible. And so we appreciate this so much.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll add there is just what listening to all those episodes also did for me was give me the confidence to apply to be a guest on this show myself. Because up until I started listening, I didn't think my story was very interesting, to be honest. Like I lived it and I'm like, it happened. But I was just like, you know what? Like I'm finding, no matter how interesting it is, every episode I found something. And I'm like, I'm doing a disservice to the community if I don't come on and try to share my story, no matter if it's interesting or not. And it gave me a boost to give that confidence to, take a few hours, type out an application and see if, I could inspire others in some way. And that's basically what I'm here to do. So.
That's great. That's great to share. And thank you for that piece, because we know that a lot of people don't think that their story is interesting or that they're not used to talking. I mean, I know it can be a little nerve-wracking when you hear me hit record and you're like, oh my goodness. Now we're on YouTube, so it's the video and the audio. I know it can be a little nerve-wracking, but you can't do it wrong when you're just sharing your experience. And so for anybody that's listening and feels like Tyler did, which is that my story isn't worthy of sharing, I will say, yes, it is, number one. And number two, don't worry, I make it painless, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And your story, Tyler, is indeed unique. I think all of our stories are definitely unique. And I would love for people to be able to follow you on your journey. So we're going to put this also in the show notes, but go ahead and give us where people can find you on social to witness your journey.
Yeah. So as much as I try to limit social media in my life, I definitely like to provide updates, especially to family and friends along my journey. So I am pretty active on Instagram and Facebook. I know it'll be in the show notes, but Tyler Diedrick on both of those. And then I did start a YouTube channel as well recently and kind of uploaded all the videos that I put together. So I usually bring a GoPro along on all my adventures. And just the other day posted episode 50, which was just a cool milestone. So they're just fun little videos, more for myself. I know a lot of people journal, which I do as well, but I like to record videos as well and watch them in the future and just remember those kind of moments, both good and bad. So my YouTube channel is called A Story to Remember. And the whole goal is exactly that, like draw a video story and rewatch it in the future to remember. So for anyone that wants to follow along there too, feel free to subscribe.
Beautiful. Final question. After listening to all of the Bike Life shows and knowing your story and knowing what's possible, what is one top piece of advice that you would give to listeners?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest piece of advice is no matter how high a hurdle seems or how high a wall seems figuratively in life, cycling or not, there's always a way around it. I heard so many stories where it's like, man, I cannot imagine that person chose to go out and cycle with condition mentally, physically, whatever it may be. A lifelong diabetic, someone in their 80s, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Things that are just hurdles that you can get around if you just put your mind to it. For myself, I was diagnosed a few years ago with a severe autoimmune arthritis condition called ankylosing spondylitis. It's similar to rheumatoid arthritis for those who don't know. But in 2021, I spent days in bed where I couldn't roll over. I had to have my roommate put my socks on. God bless her. And then the next day I'd run 8 miles. And I had a journey over a year where I had 100 doctor appointments. You know, I went to physical therapy, dietitian, and slowly figured it out, you know, through dietary and, physical activity changes in life, and solved it. And if I didn't go through that year, I wouldn't have been able to do this bike tour again because the pain would get so severe. So it's just one example for me, or multiple examples from listening to Bike Life and all those hurdles that somehow people manage to get through to do that next adventure, to go explore that new area they've never been before, because life's too short, right? If you don't do it, when are you going to? And I'll throw in one quote, which I don't think he coined it, but he used it so beautifully. Ken Francis, I know he's been a guest multiple times. But, and I'm going to butcher this, I think, but let me think about it so I say it right. And you could correct me because it's probably in your head. But we don't stop cycling because we get old. We get old because we stop cycling, or something to that tune, right?
That's it.
And when he said that, man, like I was like, that hit home. And so whether it's cycling or any other thing in life that you're into, when you stop and give it up because of some hurdle, you know, that's the beginning of the end, in my opinion. So keep pushing forward, no matter how it is, how hard it is. And I guess, again, that was a long answer to your question.
Keep
so I
going.
apologize.
This is good stuff. Keep going.
But I truly believe that. And because there's been moments in these past 3 years, many, especially with ankylosing, that I'm like, I don't think I can do this. You know, there's so many dietary things that I have to consider now. Like, I can't do this on the road. And, you know, I took 3 years and I have a food log, a long list in my phone. I'm like, I can do this, and figure out a way. Right. And I will be physically active cycling every day. So that's taken care of. But it's just one example of a hurdle that I'd tell anyone. If you ever have that thought about the wall's too big, break through it, go around it, you know, dig under it, for gosh sakes, figure out a way.
So beautifully said. Thank you, Tyler.
Absolutely.
We look forward to witnessing and being a part of your journey as you continue on. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. This was really inspiring and absolutely spectacular.
Awesome. And likewise, right back at you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show, meet you, which I'm, you know, it's so cool to see you here today. Like hearing your voice so often, like daily for the past 3 months. And so it's really surreal. And if nothing else, if literally one person listens to this and identifies with any story that I gave today, my goal is accomplished and my heart is full. So
I have a feeling that we're going to talk again.
I would love to.
Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it. And for those that are listening, go check out his links, follow him along the way, and we will be back again soon. And I'm just going to continue to swirl in all of this wonderful share from Tyler. So we will be back. Thanks, Tyler.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the show as much as we enjoyed making it. Wherever you are listening, please leave us a rating and a review, as it helps us reach more cyclists and hosts around the world. Visit us at Warmshowers.org to become a part of our community, or on Instagram at Warmshowers_org. If you would like to be a guest on the show or submit a question, please make sure to email us at podcast@warmshowers.org.